One of the questions people ask me is, Nhyira, how am I expected to write out my answers in the exam hall? And many people ask this question, especially when it comes to the written papers like public sector accounting and finance, advanced audit and assurance, advanced taxation, strategic case study, and the other subjects. And so in this video, I want to share with you some specific strategies on how you are expected to structure your answers in the exam hall so you can position yourself to ultimately pass the examination. Remember, in the exam hall, on the average, we have 3 hours to go. It means that each 1 mark question will require you to take 1.8 minutes. And so it is important that you structure your studies in such a manner that you are mentally, emotionally, and psychologically prepared even before you get into the exam hall. And so I tell students that don't wait to try to be perfect in the exam hall. You need to start working out yourself throughout your study period before the examination. And so let's give some examples. I've had discussions with my students, and some of the things that come up is always interesting. And one of the things we do here is, giving students assignments and then allowing them to be vulnerable, writing out their script, and then we go through the script and providing them with the guidelines. And then after we do that, you see that they are coming up a little bit, coming up a little bit, coming up a little bit. And so how do you structure your answers out? How do you write out your answers? The first thing is that you need to understand the concept of the syllabus. Now, listen carefully. Before we get to the exam hall, we have to practice everything. We have to put ourselves in a simulation before the exam date. So some people are waiting for the exam date to find out how they are going to be working themselves out. No, you need to have a certain personality, a certain way of life, a certain way of structuring yourself out even before the examination. So this is what I tell my students. Study and understand the principles. Now, assignments are going to be given, or you're going to be solving questions on your own. When you are doing the assignment or solving the questions on your own, you have to do that under time. That is very important because what that means is that you are practicing that urgency. Now, if you study like there is no exam, or you do the assignments like there is no exam, then you are not creating that agency on yourself and you are not working with speed and accuracy. And so before we get to the exam hall, so that you know how to manage your time and how you're supposed to answer the questions, you are supposed to be practicing it throughout the period. And this is why I tell students that you don't wait 2 weeks to the exam, a week to the exam, and think you can start learning and you go and pass the exam. And I say this always, you're going to fail 99.9% of the time. So we don't have to wait for the exam, but we got to be practicing. What does that mean? It means that you need to understand the material. That's the first level. The second level, you must understand the context of the question. Then the third level is to know how to structure your answers out in the expectation of the marking scheme. And structuring the answers out is where the problem is. And so what are some guiding principles that we can talk about? Number one is to avoid unnecessary definitions. Listen, the question is specific. You've been asked to do something. You've been asked to describe something. Go straight to the point. Avoid explaining something. So for instance, the examiner asks you to write out the audit procedure for something. Maybe it's an inventory, it's a bonus, or assets that have been acquired, or a legal issue that the company is facing and we are auditing it. Then the examiner says, explain the audit procedure you're going to be undertaking. Then you start. Audit procedure refer to the processes that the auditor undertakes to gather sufficient appropriate audit evidence to be able to reach conclusion as to whether we don't need that. That's unnecessary definition. The examiner didn't say define audit procedure and explain the procedure that should be undertaken to gather evidence in respect of the subject matter. If the question has said define and explain, then you are right. To define it, then you can explain. But the question is, there is a scenario. What audit procedures should the auditor undertake? So you go straight and say the auditor should undertake the following procedures to gather evidence about this subject. Then you start using the AEIOU principle. You go straight to the point. You avoid unnecessary definitions. That is the first thing you need to understand. Another example is, let's say we are in the public sector class, and then the examiner has given us I to V, and the examiner is asking you, what basis of accounting can be used to recognize these items? Then you start. Basis of accounting refers to how revenue and expenditure is recognized in the financial statement of the entity. Basis of accounting include a cash basis, accrual basis, modified cash basis, modified accrual basis. That is unnecessary definition. Why? Because you need to stay within the ambit of the question and writing to the context of the question. Got to avoid unnecessary definitions. Now, it doesn't mean the definition you are giving is wrong, but the context of the question doesn't require you to do that. And you writing it out, you are just wasting time, because that is not what the examiner asked you to do. You were just wasting time. So you go straight to the point and answer the question. And this is one of the things that I've seen. Sometimes people who give unnecessary information to a question don't write any significant points at the end of the day, because they end up over explaining themselves and they cannot go straight to the point. And so that's the first thing you need to understand. Avoid unnecessary definitions. The second thing for you to do is to avoid unnecessary explanation or examples. Listen, you have to be able to stay within the context of the requirements of the questions. There are sometimes people explain things, and now the more they are writing and the more examples they are trying to give, the less sense they begin to make. So you have to be careful. And I've spoken to my students. I mean, we've given assignments and students write things, and I'm like, yeah, if you had stopped here, it would have been great. But now this statement you made is meaningless, is useless. Now this statement is now contradicting everything that you have said above there, which has no relationship with it. And so for that reason, the whole thing is wrong. So you have to state. You see, it's not about the length of the answer, it's about the quality of the answer. So I tell my student this: you need to be sweet, simple, straight to the point. The answer to the question should be sweet, simple, straight to the point. In other words, you are not going to be beating around the bush. You're not going to be giving any irresponsible examples. You're not going to be further explaining things when you have already said it. So sometimes people are writing, then they've written a certain point, then they come to another paragraph or maybe the next sentence, then they are saying the same thing that they had said, but in another way. So, and then I ask, why did you say it? Because what you have said subsequently is just the same thing as you said earlier. Oh, I thought that, it was too small, so I wanted to add more points. And I'm like, what you are adding in excess is actually not right. What you are adding in excess is making the point tautology, because you've said one thing and you are saying it in another way in the script that has to be marked. So you have to learn to avoid unnecessary explanation. This one is a tough one, but you got to understand it. And so you got to be, you have to be precise as much as possible. You need to be very precise. So that is why I said, understand the material, read the question, understand the context of the question, then you know how to structure your answers in the context of the question. And that leads me to the third point, which is to learn to be direct. As you are explaining, as you are writing your answers out, you need to learn to be direct, no digression. Because as I said earlier, further explanation of points results into digression, result into you becoming a nuisance, literally, in the scripts that you are presenting to the examiner to mark. And so you need to learn to be direct. And this is one thing you need to understand. If you're explaining something and there is a specific example or there is a specific scenario that can support the point, the examiner loves it. And so you need to provide specific examples that will support your point. So you are explaining a point, but the point is not flowing well. But then there is a specific example you know of, sweet, simple, straight to the point, not write essay of an example. Sweet, simple example that you can add to it. It will bring the point home for the examiner so that you can get the full marks allocated to that particular question. So you need to learn to be direct. You see, everything that I'm telling you about, if you wait to get to the exam hall before you start doing it, before you try to apply it, you're going to fail the exam. Or your chances of passing the examination is like this. Why? Because you need to practice this throughout. So you are studying, assignments are given, you do the assignment, you are studying, there is performance evaluation test, you do it, you are studying, expose yourself to questions so that as you sit down and you are solving the questions, you are applying these things. You got to avoid unnecessary definitions. You got to make sure you go straight to the point. You got to make sure that you avoid unnecessary example. You got to make sure that you are working on these things. So you don't wait a week to the exam, 2 weeks to the exam, then you start learning. Because this is one thing I've seen. Many people fail the exam not because they don't know the material. Some people fail the exam because they lack the ability to communicate their thoughts in the manner that is expected for them to pass the examination, number one. Number two, they cannot work with speed and accuracy, and so time is always against them. So sometimes I talk to my students and I'm like, okay, you failed the exam, right? What happened? So we begin to ask questions, we begin our diagnosis process. And there are times I realize that this person is good, right? This person understands the material, but the person is not fast in the exam hall. The person is not able to communicate what they understand. So and I use this example on a lighter note that they write, right? In the realms of the spirit, I understand what they are trying to say. But on the physical script, what they have written does not communicate what they want to say. And this is a challenge for advanced audit and assurance and strategic case study. So they are communicating, they are writing out the answers. I know what they want to say, but the structure, the grammar, the context, the tenses, the way everything is being formulated is wrong. Hence, it makes the answer wrong or very shallow, and hence you cannot get the full marks available. And so you have to practice these things throughout the period before the exam. Because listen, passing the exam is not just about vibes and inshallah. Passing the exam is not just about, hey, Charlie, I've attended this class, or this class there, if you attend there, Charlie, everything. Bro, you've been attending, how far? You've been attending, how far? So we need to be really responsible to take our lives into our own hand. So you don't just sit down, not do anything, a week to the examination, then you attend one class like that and think that you can understand the material, work with speed and accuracy, write your answers in the manner that you're expected to write it, and pass the exam. So people, sometimes when results are released, people come out and say, oh, this exam, the way I wrote SPA, oh, I thought I would pass, but when the marks came, I got 15. When the marks came, I got 25. The way I wrote this thing, myself, I'm like, bro, you were writing gibberish. You were writing absolute nonsense. In your brain, you thought you were writing the best, but everything you were writing wasn't in line with the context of the question. Whatever you wrote was not in the marking scheme. That is why you failed the exam. And so what I'm trying to say boils down to everything that I keep on telling you. Do not wait 2 weeks to the exam, a week to the exam, and think you can miraculously learn the whole syllabus, understand the syllabus, work with speed and accuracy, know how to structure answers out, go to the exam hall, repeat the same thing, and pass the examination. It will not happen. It will not. And so you need to be practicing all of these things as we go, because that is how you build yourself. You need to prepare yourself before the date of the examination. That is the thing. So it's not just about, yeah, Charlie, I have learned. Hey, I understand everything. Hey, yeah, when it comes to consolidation, hey, Charlie, when it comes to the IPSAS, hey, Charlie, strategic case study there, the models there, Charlie, the way I've chewed them, they were lie. When it comes there, I'm going to do it. Yeah, you have chewed it. Yeah, you understand the material. But have you practiced speed and accuracy? Have you practiced knowing the context of the question and how you are supposed to write out your answers? Have you practiced working on your emotions? Have you practiced holding your breath whilst reading questions? Have you practiced how you are supposed to sit? You are supposed to have a positive posture in the exam hall to ensure that mentally, emotionally, you are stable throughout the 3-hour session. It's not just about the material. It's about having a transformed personality that will help you to go to the exam hall, write the exam with confidence, and most importantly, pass the examination. And I say this all the time because that is what you need to understand. Because people think that, yo, I can wait 2 weeks to the exam and I can do something. Listen, you can do something. You can learn. And you will think you understand what you learn, but you go to the exam hall, write the exam, and still fail. You know why? You've not practiced questions. You know why? You've not worked on speed and accuracy. You know why? You don't know how to write out your answers. You don't know the format your answer is supposed to take. You don't know what questions the examiner will ask, and if the examiner asks this question, how you are expected to write out your answers. You've not done all of these, and you think just that you know the material, and there is something in the exam hall, you can write anything from your head and you'll be able to pass the exam. No, it will not happen. So I want to really impress on you. If you are preparing to sit for the examination, I say this always. Do not wait 2 weeks to the exam, a week to the exam, and take one miserable leave from your company, causing financial loss to the company or the state, and go fail the exam on top of it and buy yourself emotional pressure. Start working now. Building yourself. Learn. Understand the materials, solve questions, work on your speed and accuracy, understand the way you are expected to structure your answers. These are the things. So you know the material, you know the questions the examiner is going to be asking, you have worked on structuring your answers, you are working on speed and accuracy. These together will make you pass the examination. But if you just wait a week to the exam, take one miserable leave like that, you are just going to understand the material, but you have not built yourself to work with speed and accuracy. This is what you must understand in respect of how you structure your answers in the exam, and most importantly, how you pass the examination. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.